Welcome to the Wildcats podcast, coming to you from Wildcats Studios with your hosts Adam Lund and Jeremy Boucher.
Oh, welcome to the Wildcats Studios for another episode of the Wildcats podcast, your unofficial voice for all things Moncton Wildcats. As always, fan listeners, I am your host Adam Lund. I am joined by your favorite co-hoster, Mr. Jeremy Boucher. Boucher, this is my favorite time of year, man. MasterChef finale.
Okay, yeah.
Amazing Race finale.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball races to the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
Not a big baseball guy, but I do enjoy postseason baseball. The NFL has begun. We're 2-0. Makes this much easier. NHL camp's underway, and we made it through the preseason. The regular season is upon us. How you doing?
So you know what's funny about the NFL season? So ever since you picked the Bengals, they're 0-2.
I know.
So it's like
Fun fact, my wife in fantasy football picked the Joey Burrow as their quarterback.
Oh, man.
Joe Mixon as their running back. And Jamar Chase as her wide receiver. So she went triple stack. She's 2-0, but they are 0-2.
Yeah.
So I did see a stat where, because Burrow doesn't play in the preseason, he's like 1-7 in the first 2 weeks since his career. So
He's going to turn it around.
he's going to turn it around, but I'm feeling that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
It's been a while since we cursed something, though.
well, it's your curse.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't pick them.
No, I know.
The only curse I picked was the Aaron Rodgers Achilles injury, you know?
Yeah.
Taking the Jets.
Yeah.
But you're right, MasterChef, haven't really paid attention to it. But Amazing Race finale. By the time everybody listens to this,
It'll be over, but
It'll
we'll
be
get into
over.
it next week. Come on, Team Ticat.
yeah. What else did you say? Hockey, baseball.
Hockey, baseball.
The Blue Jays are a roller coaster of emotions right now. Getting swept by Texas and then thinking it's over. And then the Blue Jays sweeping the Red Sox and the Rangers getting swept by Cleveland.
And Seattle.
So they're literally in a playoff spot.
I saw someone had a tweet. It was like, at the start of the Texas series, the Blue Jays had a 79%. Then they got swept and it went down to like 28% to make the postseason.
Yeah.
And then with them sweeping the Red Sox and Texas and Seattle, they're back right up to 79%. Like,
it just would have. It drives me crazy what a win or two against Texas would have done.
yeah.
You know, but that's just baseball, and they bounce back and they got to keep going because now they get the Yankees, and it's not going to get any easier.
No, I think they've only got division
12.
opponents, right?
Yeah, 12 games left in the
And
season.
they can't beat Baltimore. And Tampa Bay always plays them tough, which,
Mm-hmm.
based on where they're standing, I think they'd have to go through Tampa Bay in the first. They'd go to Tampa Bay, and then they'd go to Baltimore, I believe.
Yep.
Like, for best case scenario, I think they want to end up the 6th seed. So they avoid Tampa Bay, and they avoid having to go to Baltimore because baseball doesn't reseed.
Yeah.
So it's whoever you play. So they would end up playing, I think, Cleveland or no,
Mhm.
Minnesota. They'd end up
Yeah.
playing Minnesota.
Which would be great because you're right there for people from Manitoba, you know. And I'm just going crazy. I mean, it's what a week, you know. What a week. NHL rookie games are started.
Have you watched any of them?
No.
No, because they're in Penticton, and
there's
it's
like a 4-hour difference.
Yeah.
You don't start till 8:30.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I haven't paid attention. I
Right.
couldn't even tell you who's still at camp and who's doing well.
Moran
and-
was there today, or when Monday.
Yeah.
Lounsbury, I think, is still there. Moran had the assist on the
OT yeah.
winner. I don't know about Plandowski because he didn't play the first game in New Jersey.
Loshing, Sump. Haven't heard anything about them.
I think they're still there because I did see some pump put a picture of himself from the team on his Instagram. So,
Okay.
but at least he's there. But yeah, it's the best time. Like, I used to hate the fall living in Alberta because, well, it'd be snowing by now.
Yeah.
But now when you actually live in a place where you get a fall,
Mhm.
and my daughter's coming out in next week, and I'm just legit pumped just to drive around and show her that, hey, the leaves turn red and it's plus 20 in October.
Yeah.
That is amazing. So yeah, let's get a jam-packed show. We're finishing up our maritime preview, and it's our prediction episode. So let's get to this. Don't forget, as always, you can follow us on the social medias: Twitter, Moncton Wildcast; Instagram, Wildcast Podcast; TikTok, Wildcast Podcast; and of course, like and subscribe here on the YouTube, which you will notice is becoming a little bit more active on the TikTok and the YouTube side because there's a lot of work, people. So we have brought on a producer to help grow our show. It is a fan of the show, Kyle Lyons. He will be joining us for the ride. He will be along for the ride all season, producing content on YouTube, allowing me to post on TikTok and Instagram, and just keeping you guys up to date as best we can this season. And the Wildcats are doing their part to help us do that with preseason interviews so far.
Yeah, for sure. It's been great. I just have to remember not to wear my work clothes, and we'll be okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's get some news and notes.
News and notes from around the queue.
And because I hit that button, there's absolutely no news on the show. But wasn't that goalie from Quebec? Didn't he have an album drop that you forgot to talk about last week?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily call it an album.
Oh, okay.
It's called Sounds of My Thoughts because it's just sounds.
Right.
Right. There's no vocals or anything, but it's a different. It kind of reminds me of who's the not like a Mac Miller vibe,
Okay.
you know, when it comes to the to the sounds. So far, what I've heard is really creative, really neat, and you know, if we can start getting some vocals into his music, you know, it might actually he's got a future. You know,
so there's no vocals in it. It's
no
just,
vocals. It's
okay.
just sounds of my
okay.
thoughts and.
I was thinking sounds like music, and then thoughts was him putting things on paper.
Yeah, so there's no vocals, no. It's just whatever you call it there, instrumental. Is that what it's called?
Yep.
But no, it's good. Like if he can get around to this is obviously Quentin Miller that we're talking about, goalie for the Remparts. If he can get around to adding some vocals to that, I think he's got a good future.
That's awesome. All right, well, that was last week's news, but it came out I think on Monday, and I hit the button by accident. So. Training camp time.
Wildcats training camp report.
Oh, thank God we were done with training camp. We're on to the regular season. The Wildcats ended the preseason with a 9-6 victory in what we call a feisty affair, bringing the 2023 preseason to the end with a 2-3-0-1 record. Before we look ahead, I mean, just your thoughts on the overall look of Caleb Desnoyers and what he's going to bring to this organization.
I mean, scoring 25 seconds in was quite something, but for you know Richie to tell us that he's only about 80% is crazy because he was very good in that game. So once he eventually gets to 100%, he could be a force as early as this year, and him and Carrier, you know, together for the next few years. I mean, it's been a while since Moncton's had a 1-2 punch. You know, like those two guys, and you know, like I said, they're going to be together for the next 3 seasons for sure. And I mean, 1-2 punch. We're talking Sébastien Roger and Simon Lalibalté. You know, that's a 1-2 punch that we had in the late 90s, and you know, you're looking at Connor Garland and whoever
Steve Johnson or Barbashev,
whoever passed him the puck. You know, it's been a while. That's how long it's been since we've had a 1-2 punch like that. And I mean, you could make
Peltz and McKenna a little bit.
You could make the argument for that one too,
or Peltz or McKenna and Havanoff.
Yeah, like you can make those arguments, but you know, this I think, you know, Desnoyers and Carrier will, when it comes to, you know, they probably won't break Connor Garland's points record, but I think that 1-2 punch will be more significant down the road than whoever would have been passing the puck to Garland. And I think they have what it takes to be the best 1-2 punch that Moncton has seen since Roger and Lalibalté. Like it's been 30 years since we've seen, you know, two players who will play together for so long and build chemistry for years and years and years. You know, you could the Sony twins will, I mean, they're brothers, right?
Yeah.
And Desnoyers and Carey are pretty much brothers, but it's a little different. It's a very, very exciting time. And it could literally start as early as this year.
Brothers from other mothers.
Yeah.
That's the biggest takeaway I took, is just those guys playing together. And a lot of people wondered, like, will they move them in a Memorial Cup year and this and that? But from what we've seen in Shonkair the preseason, we've told you all year, like, this guy's legit. You add Caleb Desnoyers and the way they played together, I'm okay having the two 17-year-olds. And there was a lot of people that were worried in a Memorial Cup hosting year, like two 17-year-olds in your top six or whatever. But the quality of these two progressing this year, staying healthy, playing together. But even if you separate them, like I don't know if they're going to play power play minutes together. I think Denway plays power play 1. I don't know what Carrier gets, but I mean, they seemed like 18 straight minutes of 5-on-3, and Caleb Denway's second goal, he was looking for Sean Carrier right at the bottom and ended up going off another player and in the net.
Yeah.
Sean Carrier had a rocket shot on the power play, and yeah, the goaltending wasn't what Bathurst goaltending will be this season, but to see the team capitalize on 5-on-3s when goals were aplenty, and it was good to see them capitalizing. But you put those two players together, and then any worry of them on our Memorial Cup hosting team, if we get that cup, is gone. Like there's no worry to it. They are part of that future.
Well, yeah, for sure. Like they're gonna be part of this year, next year,
but this
the year
like,
after
what
that.
I'm saying is this won't be a LaRue Elliott Denway
No,
situation
God,
where
no.
we're moving these two
God,
for
no.
players, right? Like
No, or John
This
Torchetti's not around
Yeah,
anymore, right?
exactly.
To
that's what I mean. Like
make deals like
a lot
that.
of people were thinking, get these high draft picks and use them for top end players in a Memorial Cup year.
No, it's
These guys are going to be around for a few years.
yeah. There are players on the team this year that, I mean, you can probably dangle at the trade period and get a decent return. It's Dinwiddie and Carrier will be the Wildcats.
Untouchables.
You know, yeah. I mean, if you want to go that far, sure. But you know, these after, you know, what are we looking at? 2024, 2025, 2026. I know we're looking way ahead here. But those are going to be the guys. You know, those are your building blocks, and whether I'm sure they'll still be around. Like, there's no reason why they wouldn't still be around at 18 years old.
No,
Right?
and
Those are who you're still two key pieces that you'll still be able to have around to help, because it's going to be a very young team, probably in 3 seasons. You know, there's your captain, there's your assistant captain, and both are going to be fluently bilingual by then, and it looks good.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's look ahead. So I heard I was watching the Kelsey documentary on Prime, and I heard the Eagles play-by-play voice, not Cape Breton's, Philadelphia Eagles. Merrill Reese. He had a saying at the start of it, and I adapted it, and I thought it was perfect for this upcoming season. And it was, the Wildcats are going to look better on paper, but put that paper in the shredder now, because it's a true measuring stick of what this team's going to be expectation-wise. Like, now we get into it, now we get going. I guess we'll start with the off-season moves. I mean, Bhutan, throughout his games in the preseason, he looks like exceeded my expectation, because I've only seen him twice, two times a year. He's just so smart on that back end, and I think he was playing with Fortier Gendron. The defense of this team, and Johnny talked about it last week, is going to be very, very good.
Yeah, it's going to be probably one of our strengths, aside from maybe the top line. You know, your top 4 can easily compete with the others in the league.
Yeah.
Right. It's just your bottom 3 pairing, and even that, like a bottom 3 pairing of a Trent Ballantyne and a Grenier. You know, those are 2 guys that I can count on, because your bottom 3, you know, they're still going to be rolling all 6 every night, but in most cases your bottom 2 guys are the ones going up against opposing teams' bottom 6.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with them being on the ice against a team's bottom 6. And yeah, Bhutan I think he's going to be a huge part of the team. I think he's easily going to be a leader. You know, he's been in the playoffs. He's been a part of really good teams. He knows what it's going to take to get to that next level. And I think fans are really going to be impressed with him, because you're right. We didn't see a lot of them last year. And when there's no Wildcats game, how often is somebody going to sit down and watch a Gatineau game? Well, you know, it's pretty rare.
Yeah.
And
I think the only one I flipped on that wasn't a Wildcat one was Gatineau and Halifax. Once it started getting some Twitter traction, then I jumped on that one. But even still,
yeah. And honestly, like you're looking at a player who's going to have a really immediate, significant impact.
Yeah.
He will be probably on the second pairing of the power play, and if not the first, it's probably going to be Morin, Boutin as your two. I mean, do you want to put both guys on the first power play?
I think they're going to go. I think they go 4-1.
Yeah.
I think they go Mercier, Loshing, Gabe Smith to stand in front of the net.
Yeah.
Morin and Denway.
Mm-hmm. I think even those two guys, like if you want to put two defensemen out for a power play, late in the game, you need a goal. Those are probably the two defensemen that you.
Or Moran's at a 2-minute shift, and you need a guy on the top power play. Well, Boutin can step right in.
Yeah, and even Fortier Gendron, I mean, looking like a 30-year-old man out there.
Yeah, that dude's beard is better than.
I don't know what he did in the offseason. Like there's that Grecian 5, that like the hair grower.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's playing around with that all day, but he's looking like a fierce,
and he's
like
just
an
a guy
animal out there.
We're just not going to talk about this year. Like.
I'll be surprised if we say his name 10 times the entire season.
And that's a good thing because he's just. Who did I say he reminded me of when we were talking about it? De Jong.
Yeah.
Smart in his own zone, a little bit more skill. Doesn't get out of position a whole lot so far in this preseason, and just steady on the back end.
Yeah.
And I think the strength of this team is going to be the back end, where just like last year, Moran's going to be up there offensively, points wise, and I think you're going to get a lot of points because this defense has an ability to get the puck out quick.
Mm-hmm.
And there was too many times last year we came on and said, the puck didn't get out, it's in the back of the net. The puck didn't get out, it's in the back of the net.
Yeah.
I think we are better in goaltending this year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know people are going to look at Maverick Welk, and they're going to look at his save percentage in the preseason. It's the same thing as Steinman. And for the third week in a row, I will tell you, he's a junior B/junior A goalie coming to major junior. He's getting beat up top, but he's going to figure that out. Like he's going to adapt. He makes great saves. He's agile. He's quick. He's just basically a carbon copy of Steinman, and you saw what Steinman did when he got comfortable. I think when you get into November, late December, I think we're going to be content with both goaltenders rolling them out whenever we need to roll them out.
Yeah, because there's going to be an adjustment period. If you look at that game against Bathurst, like some of his saves were five bellers.
Yeah.
Like 10 bell saves, and they just made you make your eyes pop out of your head, and really, just maybe a goal or two that you might want back.
The 5-hole one.
There's one that the 5-hole one.
Fortier Gendron's head.
There's one that went off. Yeah, one that went off Fortier Gendron's head,
and then I think one was a stick deflection.
Yeah, and the others were just perfect shots. And other than that, I mean, he's making the saves that he needs to make, and some of these saves he's making the hard saves look easy, and that sounds like Simon last year, right? He's so honestly, he's not a goalie that you want to give up on early because he's late. He's technically he's gonna play as an 18-year-old, but he's got a late birthday, so he's still 17, I think. So you can't give up on a goalie like that really early. You can see his upside, and I think it's a perfect complement to Simon. It's the same thing with you had I don't see it happening like last year where Welk goes and steals the number one job, but he's a goalie that I think could probably step in and play those games against the bottom teams and help not give this Simon the rest when he goes up against those the bottom teams and gets the wins and makes the saves that he needs to make.
And that's the thing is you look at the schedule and you've got back-to-back in Cape Breton, back-to-back the next weekend, and then it's just a stretch of 3-4 in the first month of the season. Yeah. So he's going to get playing time and he's going to be rewarded with that. And it's going to be a situation where even if kind of things don't go well, like there's an ability to add at the deadline. And that's Richie understands that. This is a win now team. This is, they went to the second round. Now it's time to go to the third round, maybe the final four. So I think Maverick will be much improved. And like Richie said, we had an experienced goaltender in that. And that's exactly what it is. And I'm pretty sure if you go back and listen, we had the same chat last year about Simon. Yep. We just didn't know what he was going to be. And I think we didn't know
anything about him.
No.
Right? We were basing our opinions on him based on a few preseason games. And it's the same thing with Welk. I think you and I we learned our lesson. Don't judge a goalie based on preseason.
Yeah.
Give it a few months, and then we'll come back and revisit it. I don't want to trade for a goalie this year. I think it's pointless to trade for a goalie this year. We've got, if for some reason it doesn't work out, which I think it will. I think it will.
Yeah.
There's, we were demanding for Filion to be traded last year. He didn't get traded. He waited until, the summer.
Yeah.
Right. You see if there's any. Don't just go and jump the gun and go and trade for a goalie.
No, and if you have to have Maverick up in the press box for a game or two because it's just not working, it's a guy in Yarmouth that can carry the water
I
for a
wouldn't
little
go that far. I mean, I would just that's what he's a backup for.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think you'd go and put a goalie up in the stands when he could just sit on the bench and pick up tendencies from ice level that you wouldn't see from the press box, right? If you're a goalie, you're watching the game, you're watching your players, you're studying the game.
Sometimes it's just better to get that view of how things are moving, the speed of the game. But what's a player that we usually do this that you're looking forward to taking the next step?
The next step, oh geez, man, I wasn't expecting this one. But on the roster itself, I'd probably have to say, I think I said Miles Mueller last year.
Yeah.
And
he did.
He had a really good year. I don't want to take him again. But I'm going to have to go with Gabe Smith. I think if the plan is for him to park his ass in front of the net on the power play, that's a big boy, and he's going to get some rebounds. And I think he started to play his best hockey towards the end of the season last year. And I think that's a kind of a motivation for him to get this season off to a good start too, because he's probably going to start on the third line.
Yeah.
He's probably going to play with a Connor Trenum and maybe a Miles Mueller. Like that's and those are two. Connor Trenum's the leader, and Mueller's been around long enough as well to help him out, and he's got that size. I want him to be a little more physical, and I think if he starts throwing his weight around, he could be a force.
Yeah, I can't remember who I picked last year. I think it was a defenseman, but I think it's Mercier for me. Mm-hmm. We had that wonderful. You almost walked out because I gave him a D grade as a joke, and you saw flashes of it last year when he played with. I don't want to say talented players because everybody in this team is talented, but when he played with the higher skill guys in the top six, you kind of saw him take off. And I think that's a guy I'm looking for to kind of take the next step as a goal scorer, because we're going to need goals in that top six. And I think he's one that if he can stay in that top six, stay healthy, I think I'm looking for big things offensively from him, especially if he's in the Loshing spot. Mm-hmm. On the second power play. Like, he's got a great shot, and I know Carrier's got the same thing, but I think if he gets power play minutes, I think offensively you're going to see him kind of just take off and take that next step, and that's exactly what we want to see. We've kind of had him when he's been in and out of the lineup, bottom six, top six. I think this is the year that he kind of stays in that top six and kind of takes off.
Yeah, because late birthday, so it is his NHL draft year. Yeah. So I think he wants to have a big season for that reason. And I think the key for him is you stay healthy. There's a couple guys in that lineup that
the key is to stay healthy.
Yeah, like the Augiers and the Merciers. These guys got to stay healthy and have big years. And because if we can stay healthy, I think the team has the opportunity to do some damage.
Yep. All right, Rookie of the Year.
Wildcats Rookie of the Year. Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious. It's going to be Desnoyers.
Yep.
It's no respect to Maverick Welk and Sean Carrier and
Nathan
Zielinski and Gloss and Dubray. But
Dubray, is it?
Nathan Dubray.
Okay.
I don't know.
So my English of Dubrell is not correct.
Dubray.
All right.
Logically, you have to go with Desnoyers. I mean, it's
if that was 80%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you
have to.
I mean, it's probably already carved in the trophy for all we know, but No, there would have to be something would have to go drastically wrong for him not to be the Wildcats Rookie of the Year.
And your Wildcats MVP.
You know what? Jacob Steinman.
Oh, all right.
I'll go Jacob Steinman. I think people were, you got to look at the Loshing, but I think you're gonna win games in net, and I think he's gonna have a workload this year, and I think he's got the stamina to be able to play that increased workload.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I got to go Simon. I think he's probably the guy who's going to get probably 75% of the starts, and if he can perform like he did last year, I think it's between him and Loshing, and Loshing's going to have the support enough to. Is he really going to be the most valuable player? Probably not. That's why I think it'll be Simon.
I'm going to go with who I also think will be the captain of the team. I'm going to go with Etienne Morin.
Yeah.
I think I honestly think he has a legitimate shot to lead this team in points. And I think if he does that, captain leads the team in points. I think it's him, and I think it's for the same reason you talked about in the back end. And it's going to be, if Steinman is very good, Etienne Morin on the back end is going to be very good in front of him. So yeah, I think Morin will be named captain at the home opener as well. I think he'll be our MVP. Do you think Morin will be captain? You need to go that route? I won't lie. I'm done with the one and dones.
They should.
Yeah.
Because you're right. They have to have somebody that's going to be here this year, next year, and the year after that,
and a half year after that.
Yeah, you need to start having a voice.
Yeah.
That's going to be the voice for the next few seasons. It's is he vocal enough?
We're not in the locker room.
We're not in the locker room, right? I think that's been the issue the past couple of years is we haven't had a vocal leader like a Pelche or a Hudson, right? So we need someone that's vocal, that's going to lead on and off the ice, and I think I think he'd be a very good fit. And surround him with a Boutin and a Trenum and a Plandowski, and those are guys that you can also rely on. That's like any other game could turn around and wear a C, but they're also kind of in their last years with the team. So you're right. I'm kind of done with the one and done.
Yeah.
Let's have somebody that's going to wear it this year, the next year, and the year after that.
And just 3: a captain, an assistant, and an assistant. I was looking back. And in 2020, 2021, when it was Fortier and Hudson as captains, there was 13 assistant captains named down that list. So I like your Boutin, Trenholm as your A's, and then Morin as the C. But we're going on a road trip.
We are.
So we should probably talk to the guy to finish our Maritime Division and set up the road trip.
Yes, do it.
All right.
I like it.
View from the other bench.
All right, our final stop in our preseason look around the Maritime Division, and it actually sets up perfectly as we're getting ready to open the season against them. That's the Cape Breton Eagles, and we are pleased to be joined by friend of the show with the second most appearances, Pat McNeil. Sir Pat, welcome back to Canada. Are you rested and ready for another season?
I rested, relatively speaking, I guess. Definitely, I think, getting close to ready. A little bit crestfallen with the news that I'm second in appearances. We might have to change that as the season goes on. But certainly doing podcasts like this definitely get you ramped up. But going to be a good season, particularly, I think, for our teams in the Maritime Division. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's I don't think you're much behind Jamie Tozer, but you are behind Jamie Tozer. So,
Jamie is everywhere, so he's really tough to compete against.
That is true. So I guess, I don't know how much of camp you've been around for or paying attention while you were down in Kentucky and all over the United States, but I guess just what's the atmosphere of what camp was like, and then getting into the season, the expectations. I think they're pretty high in Cape Breton.
Yeah, I didn't get to see a lot of camp action, but have been around the team a lot after the team was picked, and there's a good vibe in the team. Lou Robitaille obviously comes in, new head coach. There's new energy there, and it seems like the players are responding to him positively, which is good to see. You never know how that's going to go. He can be a demanding coach, but so far it seems like the players like being pushed, so it's good. And a lot of guys returning. If you look at the makeup of this team, I think one of the subtle stories of the offseason in Cape Breton is that this has truly become Sylvain Couturier's team, because he inherited a team that after the 2021-2022 season was obviously a rough year for the Eagles at the bottom of the league. In that offseason, he had to make a lot of moves to get younger to build the contend in the future, but then he had to go get some older, not so much stopgap, but veteran players to kind of fill the roster. This year, as opposed to the beginning of last season when you only had 7 returning players, this year you've got 13 guys returning, plus 3 of the rookies are affiliate players from last season. So the 2022 draft class kind of getting its time to shine. So it's obviously pieces coming in with Cole Burbage and Cam McDonald up front particularly, and you have 2 new imports as well. But I think as much of anything, you're looking at improvement from that returning core is part of the reason you have those high expectations you speak of. And I talked about it in the intro. You look at Cape Breton and Moncton, and I think Halifax obviously as well, maybe a bit of a 3-headed monster there in the Maritimes, and it should be some good games between those 3 teams, not to take for granted games against any other teams, but I think the Eagles are optimistic of being in the mix and trying to fight for a division title.
Right.
Yeah, Adam and I saw a lot of you at the draft, Pat, and when I say a lot of you, we mean, of course, the back of your head. And
better view, right?
Yeah.
We were privileged to also be in a few of your interviews that you did with your draft picks, including Emile Ricard. It's actually a pleasant surprise, or a pleasant change, I guess you could say, to actually have a player excited to go to Cape Breton. I understand there's also an organizational connection to that pick. I guess if you could just tell us your overall thoughts on him so far, and as camp has progressed.
Well, certainly, as you mentioned, excited to be in Cape Breton, brings a great energy to the team. It's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts, because he's somebody who doesn't like to shy away from physical play, and that might be a bit challenging at 16, especially he's a young 16 who's born in the fall. Grew up going to Voltigeur games, that kind of fancies himself after Andre Palat, who obviously he would have watched play with at Drummondville. One of the tie-ins you speak of is obviously he would have been drafted by Sylvain Couturier, and when Sean Couturier was drafted in the queue, he was drafted by Emile's father when Emile was the general manager of Drummondville. And of course, Sean Couturier, to further add to that story, was drafted at the draft in Cape Breton. So kind of a neat tie in there. It is going to be interesting to see what he does this season. I think he played center in the U18 ranks, probably going to be more relied upon on the wing, but I think he'll get some opportunity to succeed. And as I mentioned, didn't get a chance to see much game action of him, but certainly is coming to the rink with a smile on his face. He's the only 16-year-old on the team, so he's the one that's bringing the youth to this organization at the moment. And I think he's kind of chomping at the bit to get into it, and certainly we're excited to see what he brings on the ice at the major junior level.
So I like to talk goaltending. We've had it every year with the Eagles, with you, and it's always been a 1A, 1B situation. You've had Ruccia and De La Fonte, you've had Ruccia and Satney. Now you got Ruccia and Milata, who we saw him stop 51 of 54 shots or something like that a week ago. Is this Ruccia's net, and what's the confidence level behind him going into his 3rd season?
I think it's 1A and 1B again, and the team has pretty much said as much. So Ruccia is the designated starter if there were one, but Sylvain Couturier and Lou Robitaille have both been vocal about just the way the Q schedule is, particularly with Cape Breton. The team travels so much. There's a little bit of added fatigue there. Says that you really just can't rely on one goaltender. And I think, as cliche as it is to say, that's becoming more of the case throughout the hockey world now. And the Eagles are not really any exception to that. Ruccia, obviously the more experienced of the 2 goaltenders. And kind of an interesting story about Ruccia from my perspective. You guys would remember that he played the 3rd period of that last game of the year in Moncton. The Eagles had won 4 straight games in Moncton, and the jig was up the last game of the season. The Eagles need a win to move up the standings, and they end up losing to the Cats. Shatney gets pulled after 2 periods, and it was a rough night for the Eagles. And I was thinking, well, the one silver lining in this is if Ruccia gets in and has a strong 3rd, then he can get that save percentage up maybe close to or at 900. But unfortunately, it was just one of those nights where everything was going well for Moncton, so the opposite ended up happening. And poor Ruccia's save percentage went down a couple of notches in the third period. But I think he was probably pretty happy. Obviously, the playoffs were not successful for the team, but I think he was probably happy with a lot of the games we saw in the second half, particularly that game in Halifax, the second last game of the season, where he took a couple of valuable points for the Eagles. But he's obviously being pushed by a bit of an unknown. I say, you never really know how the imports are going to adapt to North America. Mulata obviously looked really good at the U18s, and as you said, was very impressive in preseason action. So I think it's a scenario where Ruccia would be the designated starter by way of having experience, but he comes into camp knowing that he's got a guy looking over his shoulder, because obviously Mulata's the future. Right. Time will tell if he's the present as well. And certainly we'd love to see what he gave in the U18, but also would like to see some strong games from Ruccia, like we saw in some of those games we saw in the second half. And his stat line is kind of improving every year, as goaltenders tend to do. Whether it improves enough for him to keep getting the load in the crease, well, that's why they play the games, and we'll have to wait and see.
Of course, it's a big season for Thomas Lavoie going into his NHL draft year. Do you expect him to, I guess, be a part of the leadership group this year in Cape Breton? And what sort of projection do you see him taking? Because statistically, people will say he didn't have the greatest season as a 16-year-old, but some will say that he actually had a really good 16-year-old season. So where do you see him, I guess, on the leadership group this season and statistically as well?
I think he'll have a voice in the dressing room. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Whether or not he would have a letter or not, there's a lot of returning players, particularly on the blue line. So I wouldn't say, although it wouldn't be shocking. Yes, it's possible. The big thing with Thomas is he really bulked up in the offseason. 6'4", 220 pounds. This is a big guy heading into his draft year. And as for his season last year, Jeremy, to your point, stats don't tell the whole story, particularly for a defenseman. He and a lot of the other Eagles defensemen who were playing last year were relied to play heavy minutes. It's interesting. The Eagles not only suffered a lot of injuries on defense last year, but it was a quirk that early in the season, they suffered a lot of injuries early game, which means that not only were guys moving up the chart, but they were playing a lot of minutes in games where the team only had 5D. So he was the recipient of that ice as much as anybody. You had both him and Xavier Daigle, rookie defensemen, playing upwards of 25, 30 minutes. Obviously, a best defenseman is going to make mistakes in that scenario, much less a guy who's a rookie in the QMJHL. The offense, hopefully you see that come this year. It'll be interesting, though, because he might be a bit more insulated than you expect because of all the returning guys. Like Bigger comes back, Shortle, Schmidt. Certainly he's going to have his opportunity, but maybe that's also going to inspire him, the fact that he's not just fighting for a draft position. Top four ice on the back end is not always going to be guaranteed with all the other guys there, but I think the expectations are pretty high for him. And based on what we saw last year, he's not in first rounds of mocks yet. Maybe he could work his way up there, but I think there's a lot of excitement as to what he can bring this year. And as I said, he's certainly beefed up heading into this sophomore year of junior hockey.
So some of those returning guys that come back, they were part of the Eagles that went 6-3 in 9 games against us last year. And of course, you added Braden Schmidt, but you've added Cam McDonald. You've added one of the bigger trades of the offseason in Cole Burbage. I guess just from a fan's perspective, is this a cup or bust year? Like this is have Sylvain push all in, or is this a year one of a 2-year window? Learning to win in the playoffs, because it's not easy to win in the playoffs. You got to learn how to do that, and Moncton did that last year with winning that first round series and then moving into Halifax. You got to learn that. So, what is the fan expectation? Is it a Christmas that's going to be full of some moves and it's all in, or win a couple rounds and we're happy with that, and next year is kind of when we want to get to where we want to go?
I would say it's more the latter. Obviously, you're never happy with losing, but to use the window open analogy, it's almost like the team is opening up the window halfway with the intention of pushing it all the way open the next year. That's kind of one way I would look at it. There is an expectation and a need really for the team to have some playoff success. It's not a championship or bust, but this team needs to be pretty good right now. And I think the pieces are there, both from that internal development and also bringing in guys like McDonald and Burbage, and we'll see how the Europeans adapt with Stahan up front as well as Mulata and Nets. So there's definitely a hope that this is going to be a year where this team takes a step forward. Interesting because, maybe the true powerhouses of the league lie in the West, but I think the East might be a deeper conference. You take a look at what Quebec did last year. Obviously, they're vastly depleted, but all the teams right under Quebec are all teams that should come back pretty consistent to what they were last year. Yep. So with all the moves the Eagles made, they should be, at least able to keep pace, but they're going to get a push from everyone else. So it's going to be tough sledding in the Eastern Conference, but pretty fun to watch. And expectations are high in Cape Breton, as they should be. Fans that pay money to go to games, so they should have high expectations. And they've been waiting a long time to see their team succeed in the playoffs. And I think the team is in position to do that this year to a degree. But as I said, there won't be many easy games in the East this year, so it should be a pretty fun year for a neutral fan. It might be frustrating for these good teams when they get in each other's way, but for a neutral fan, there should be some good games for sure.
Yep.
And that leads in perfectly to our final question, talking about the battle of the East and the West. We like to ask this to you pretty much every year, but if you could just maybe give us your prediction on the two teams who will face off against each other for the league championship.
That is a very good question, and oh boy, it's tough. I feel like the powers maybe in the West, we could be lined up for a Rouyn-Noranda Victoriaville final. That's kind of my first instinct. With Rouyn-Noranda, it's not so much the team that they have, although it is a very good team. It's the fact they made so many moves in the off season that you think, well, they're not fooling around. If they went out and got Langlois, Russo, Lashko, and Varro, and obviously Victoriaville was sort of setting the table. We don't know if Frederic Brunet is going to be back this year, but there's still a lot of pieces there. So those are the two teams that kind of stick out in my head. But Halifax, it's really going to be interesting to see how much of their success was dependent on Doucette and Lawrence last year. There is that outside chance. Jordan Dumais makes the NHL. That obviously throws a lot of wrinkles into things. And, as I said, Halifax is going to get pushed by the Eagles. They're going to get pushed by Moncton. They'll get pushed by Rimouski and Baie-Comeau as well. Probably throw Chicoutimi in there. So they would be the team, though, I'm kind of most looking at. And then Drummondville as well is going to be interesting, although they kind of have a core that hasn't been where they've wanted the last few years. But, head coaching changed there, so it could be time. Instinctively, my first gut reaction would be Rouyn and Victoriaville, but I think there might be maybe more depth in the league this year. I don't envision anybody walking to a title. And as I said, I think that should make for some pretty fun hockey for fans to watch.
Well, that went 5 sweep for Rouyn.
Mm-hmm.
So at least Rouyn the expectations are there. And you know what?
I will say this, though, Adam. I think a lot of that is just based on the fact they made so many moves. And this is not discrediting the players that are coming back, but I don't see that roster as being heads above the rest of the league. Don't get me wrong. A lot of good pieces, a really good team, but there's going to be some good competition in this league, and they're going to have to work for every win they get.
Absolutely. And like I said, Rouyn is there, and we're not going to hold you to this prediction. We will give you a chance, like we've given everyone a chance to come back on the trade deadline shows, and because that's going to affect a lot of things. There's injuries, there's teams playing to expectations, there's team not playing. So we'll let you come back and change your prediction if you want at the trade deadline show, if that works for you.
Always. I very much appreciate the opportunity to not look like a fool, which is not always easy in this game, as you guys know.
No, it's stay away from technology, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's probably a good first step.
That's what I've learned.
A lot of aspects.
Yeah.
Speaking of fools, really looking forward to our trip to Cape Breton this weekend.
Yes, and this will be, I guess, breaking news for those listening. The tentative plans are to feature Adam and Jeremy on the air live on Saturday, and hopefully we can repurpose some of this audio for Friday's broadcast. Definitely looking forward to seeing you guys at Center 200, and I look forward to the post podcast as well, not just your impressions on the two teams, but also your impressions of the Center 200 experience, as it were.
I'm looking forward to the post-game celebrations.
Yeah, we've dug into the post-game scenarios with you, and my last question to you, I was a little sad to find out there's no, let's call them adult establishments in Nova Scotia,
yes,
but we're just pumped to both visit the Center 200 for the first time, and just experience that. And again, like I said to Corey last week, I mean, this show can't progress the way it has without you guys in the media treating us with respect and coming on and giving us the time. So yeah, we're definitely excited to get to Cape Breton next Friday.
Well, happy to do so. Happy to have you guys and happy to be on the show as well. I think it's reciprocated because it's good to have people who take on their own project and show enthusiasm for the league. And if people are going to be enthusiastic about covering the league, that's not something that should be turned down. I think the Cats, they should be thankful that you guys are giving them a lot of good free publicity. I know you guys are cranking out the player interviews and all that. It's good stuff. So definitely looking forward to see what your impressions are of Sydney, because I know you've had the chance to go to some of the other rinks. But it's funny because of the way distance works. Moncton is a close opponent for us, but we're a far opponent for you. So a bit more of a adventurous road trip for you to come to Cape Breton. And, maybe you can take route 125 on the way down and route 4 on the way back, so you see both sides of the Redor Lakes and have a good time during your weekend, both off and on the ice, away from the rink.
Well,
noted.
I mean, on the ice doesn't depend on what we do. That's for sure. But it's exciting. I think it was supposed to happen last year too. Is back-to-back games on opening weekend, and I think that's something they should do all the time. Whether it's go there or come here, just establish that back-to-back rivalry on open weekend and set things up. But yeah, again, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, man, and we'll see you Friday.
Thanks, guys. Look forward to it. Last note I'll say, sometimes these back-to-back games, they don't look like each other at all. So what you see Friday, don't necessarily expect to see Saturday, but I do expect good games and look forward to seeing you guys as well. Thanks again.
Yeah, no problem, Pat. I'm pumped to go to Cape Breton.
Yeah, me too.
I guess not Cape Breton, Sydney. Just as both of our first games doing this, both of us being up with Pat in the intermission. I just don't know what to expect from the game. I don't know what to expect from the two games. I mean, Cape Breton has basically run our show for the past last season and into this kind of preseason. And I don't know what to expect from these two games.
I think that record against Cape Breton is on the bulletin board. Bulletin board,
whiteboard, whatever they call it.
Yeah. I think that's the message. Don't let this team control you like they did last year. And I think the key of these games will be who's back.
Yes, for both sides.
Yeah, both sides. Yeah. It's can we get a couple guys back? Will they have a couple guys back? It's going to come. I think the game comes down to who's in the lineup and who's not. Malota is a goalie who's capable of facing 50 shots a night.
Yeah.
And which kind of leads me to believe that given Brucia as a 19-year-old, he would be a very solid backup acquisition for a contending team.
Yeah.
Not even a backup. Like, that's someone who could easily step in to be a starter as well. And that's what I mean. Like, if there's a team that is legit all in and they want a 1-2 punch, I think Rucci is the first guy you're calling about.
Your transitions this preseason are unbelievable.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, The problem with that is depending what type of jump he gets off to, right? Because especially with the expectations that we talked about with Pat from this team this season, I mean, do you want to put it in the hands of a 16-year-old and you move your 19-year-old at the trade deadline at Christmas?
I mean, why not? I mean, if it's
depending what their window is, right?
And that's fine. Like, next year is their year, right? It's lining up like the COVID year where Moncton and Cape Breton will be the two teams.
God, those were good series.
Yeah, like
those were a good season series.
And by that time, Malota will be 18.
Yeah.
And he's got one full year under his belt. He's capable of being the number one with Cape Breton as an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
It's I fully expect Rucci to be dealt. I
do too, and we'll find out why in a minute. But yeah, I do too.
There's they'll get a very good return for him too, and he will solidify the goaltending for one of the contending teams, whether he goes down the road to Halifax or does the furthest route, Cape Breton to Rouen. It's Drummondville maybe, but he's going to get traded. I think it would be a mistake if Ruccia stays the whole season in Cape Breton.
Yeah. Yep. Let's find out why I think that. So we're going to get into our prediction part of the show. I don't even know how much we hit last year. I'm pretty sure we got the MVP correct, but other than that, I'm not sure how we did on the Rookie of the Years. But so yeah, you've heard from everybody else for our finals predictions. So Corey Arsenault had Rouen and Halifax. Jamie Tozer had Rouen and Halifax. Willie Pavlov, again, Rouen and Halifax. Johnny Rocket had Rouen and Moncton. and Pat had Rouen and Victoriaville. We're not going to get into ours just yet. We're going to go MVP of the league. I'll kick it off, and it is the unquietest trade of the offseason. It's Ethan Gauthier in Drummondville. I think he is the MVP. Now, this is prefaced, whatever it is, by you 2 weeks ago saying Jordan Dumais will not be in Halifax until after the World Juniors. If he comes back for the full season, I'm still going to stick with Gauthier, but I still think it'll be a lot tougher. It'll be those two kind of as they go. But if Jordan Dumais stays in Columbus with their new coach who used to be in Cape Breton, it's Ethan Gauthier.
Yeah, and I can see that. I mean, for me, obviously, if Jordan Dumais is in Halifax the entire season,
he might be the CHL player of the year.
He's the league MVP and very possibly the CHL MVP. Now, a few weeks ago, I said it's Halifax's season will depend on where he is.
Yeah.
There's been some things that have happened in Columbus over the past couple of days that I think will lead to Dumais being with Columbus.
Yeah, his path got a little brighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A younger voice behind the bench in Pascal Vincent, former Cape Breton Eagles head coach. I think a young mind like him will focus on Dumais sticking around, whether that's all season, whether that's until the World Juniors, then he gets sent back. I think he sticks with Columbus. Maybe not all season, but I'm saying he's going to start the season with Columbus. 6 points in his first preseason game. I shouldn't say preseason game, rookie game. Yeah. He can play at the level.
Yep.
So with that being said, league MVP, I am going to Rouen.
Okay.
Daniil Bourash, their Belarusian import.
Yep. Yeah.
I think him and Antonin Verreau will be deadly all season. Bourash will probably get 50, 60 goals. Maybe even more, and they'll be fed by Verreau. So it's going to be one of those two. But I also think, Verreau with his injury last year might get off to a slower start, just the transitioning period. But I think Bourash, he's been scoring goals left and right ever since he came to the league 3 years ago. So I'm going with Daniil Bourash.
All right. Your rookie of the year.
League.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
This is very difficult for us.
So I've kind of divided it a little bit. I know this is kind of unfair because I don't, with all due respect to imports, I feel there should be an import rookie of the year, and there should be a under 17
rookie
of the year.
16 and 17, yeah.
So, the league rookie of the year, I've kind of tossed some names around. I was going with Caleb Desnoyers. I was going with Louis-François Boulanger in Bathurst. I was even going with Raoul Boilard in Baie-Comeau.
Is that the one they drafted or the one they acquired?
The one that they acquired.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. One of the
one of the two.
Now, I'm going to take a import rookie of the year, who I think is just going to be an import that's going to put up so many points that...
You can't do that last year with Malofsky, too.
Yeah. So it'll be Yuri Klima with Shawinigan. But that's not my league rookie of the year. I decided to stay at home.
Is that in relation to Peter Klima?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. I have decided to stay at home and take Caleb Desnoyers as my league rookie of the year. Just, I mean, how can you not?
Yeah.
Boulanger will, as good as he's been in the preseason, I don't know if he's going to put up the same type of numbers in the regular season. And I just saw way too much from Desnoyers against that game in Bathurst, knowing he's only 80%, to say no to that. I think he's. It's the safe pick and it's the good pick.
Yeah, it is. And we talked about this at the game, and I thought it, this was before the game actually happened. I think I said I was gonna pick Carrier, and then the game happened, and Denway, I mean, at 80% was better than pretty much everyone on the ice. I go back to our draft prep and our draft shows, and Denway was going to be the 200-foot player, and you said Emil Guite was going to be the scorer, and he was going to lead the league for rookies. So I'm going to go with Denway's teammate for Chicoutimi. I'm going to go with Emil Guite as my rookie of the year.
Love it.
It's usually the guy that puts up the most points as a rookie, and I think he's going to have all the opportunity in that. I mean, there's 4 rookies for the Sags playing there. And, I mean, you look at the draft class, we're going to be so – if you don't have your season tickets or you haven't bought tickets yet, I mean, you look at the draft class that's going to be coming through. Guite, Lecomte, Wang, just from Chicoutimi itself. But, I mean, Rudy Lampron, Phil Veilleux and Valdor. There's going to be some good guys coming through here. So now we get to the Gilles Courteau Trophy final.
I'll let you go first.
I got one team figured out. So they're going to acquire Ruccia, and I'm sticking with my 1A, 1B goaltending situation. One of the teams is Drummondville.
Okay.
I was kind of toying with teams, and then I can't remember who you were talking to or who we were talking to off air, but you said they're going to have Cote back all season. They're going to have Maverick Lamoureux back all season. So I think Ruccia will be dealt to Drummondville. And, I mean, just like Shawinigan when I picked them with the 1-2 punch, and then Victoriaville last year with the 1-2 punch. Now, again, I really wish the Q would go east-west because it would be so much easier to pick east-west, but they go to the league when they get into the top 4. So I don't know if we're going to have an Eastern Conference team. I think it's going to be Drummondville and Victoriaville.
Oh,
I think
that's
those,
a rivalry.
I think those are your finals. If they can avoid each other in the Western Conference, I think that's your final because of the fact that it goes league wide and it ranks 1 through 4 and 2 versus 3. If it was strict West East, I think your East final would be Moncton and Baie-Comeau. I really wanted to pick Baie-Comeau. I just don't think they have the assets to go in this year, and I think they're trending next year with Cape Breton and Moncton to be 3 of the top 4 teams. I'm going to go Victoriaville and Drummondville, and I made that Victoriaville pick right meow because if you look on our thing, I had Drummondville versus blank because I was toying between 3 or 4 teams, but the way the league sets it up in the final, in the semifinal to go to the 4 top teams in the league, I think it'll be 2 Western Conference teams.
No, it's Drummondville and Victoriaville are literally neighbors.
Well, Drummondville eliminated Victoriaville last year, so
that would be a freaking good final.
And the team in Victoriaville that won it all, flipped it real quick and is back in the finals 2 years later.
So they made way too many good moves in the off season to count them out. Little earlier, I said maybe Ruccia would be a good landing spot in Rouen. Then I realized that they have Kyle Hagen as their backup, so I doubt that's going to be a landing spot for Ruccia. So you're probably on the right path where it's Drummondville. I can't look past Rouen. I have to go with them. It's Drummondville will be good, but at the same time, I just think Rouen is going to have that extra firepower for them to get past Drummondville. Yeah, you're right. The second team is tough. I've mulled over so many. I looked at Baie-Comeau and I was like, okay, well, they've got the Bollard brothers now that are going to have, that brotherly chemistry. Yeah. Chiarlo, who almost won them the series against Moncton.
Keep it under 4 goals, and he's fantastic.
Yeah. And Poirier and
Malofsky.
Dufour and Malofsky and all those guys are back this year. It's hard not to ignore them.
They have a first this year and a third, and then a first and a third next year to make some moves.
However, ladies and gentlemen, close off Main Street, folks, because we're having ourselves a parade in June.
Nice.
Because the Wildcats, I shouldn't say parade, but yeah, I honestly,
So we're heading to Saginaw?
we're not heading to Saginaw.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying this is my prediction. I'm not saying we're going to win a trophy here.
Well, you said parade, so
I know.
I was like, we're heading to Saginaw? I know where that is.
We're going to have a Final Two parade.
I'm in.
No, there's just something inside me that tells me that A, Dumais just not coming back.
Yeah.
B, Cape Breton has just not proven they can get to that next level.
Yep.
And other than that,
It's not
if you win the division, you're automatic
Yeah.
top three, right?
Yeah.
Top three. And that's going to give home ice for at least 2 rounds. And
if you win the conference, you get home ice in round 3 too, because you're one of the top 2
it's
teams.
like Moncton has a very good chance to win the conference, right? And it all leans on the Halifax situation. And again, something tells me that you won't see Dumais back until January.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, where's Halifax?
Yeah.
Right? Are they close enough that they can say, okay, we're doing it, we're all in? Or are they so far behind that they're just like, let's sell off, maybe try next year? And something just tells me deep down inside that they're going to decide, let's just wait till next year. Moncton will win the games they need to win, and in the second half, go on, win the division, possibly win the conference, and go head-to-head against Rouen in the final.
Now, cards on the table. I didn't take Moncton because I kind of thought you were going to lean that way, and we can't be that homer of a show.
Yeah.
But
I'm just...
There's no one in the East, and that's why I went to
Yeah.
Western Conference teams, because of the way the league sets up. But I think if Moncton is in a hot start and they're first in the conference and Dumais not back in Halifax, we're kind of not running away with it, but we're leading the pack.
Mm-hmm.
If we can secure the Memorial Cup, do you think there is a chance that there is a guy in Gatineau as a 19-year-old?
Savoie?
No, the other one.
Luno?
Yeah.
No.
To solidify the defense?
He's not back next year. He's okay, he's going to be back.
But he's in that situation where the team keeps him and then sends him back because we have the more. This all hinges on because we have the Memorial Cup. And I've asked you this a few times. I've gone back and forth, but
I'm not doing it. I'm not looking ahead that far, man.
Yeah.
Like it's no. I keep
because the moves at the Christmas trade deadline are going to kind of coincide with having the Memorial Cup, right?
Well, yeah,
year.
but the Memorial Cup won't be decided until January, February.
Is it that late?
The host, yeah. So your trade period will be over by the time.
I thought it was like late November for some reason.
So I don't think there's going to be any drastic moves.
Okay.
There's nothing that needs. There's no
obvious holes.
No, there's not. But I also think there is going to be a move made that a player is out, but at the same time, a player comes in that's a year younger. So it's going to be, yes, the moves will be made to be good in the second half, but also better yourself the following year. That's the moves that will be made. There's a couple players that I think you could probably get some assets for, but also still be in a spot to sell but win.
Right.
Like there's going to be more like a happy medium with any trades that are made this year.
And you know what? We got 2.5 months before we discuss.
Yeah.
Trades are going to go. So, that'll do it for this episode. Thanks again to Pat McNeil for jumping on with us this week to look at the Eagles season as well, get us ready for the matchup. Again, that we will be at. So stay tuned to our social medias. We'll be there for both games this weekend and all the fun activities outside of the arena, which,
Yes.
like we said, could be you going to bed at 9:30 because you're the
Well,
early riser.
possible, you know.
But we don't have to get up. We can party it up and see how it goes. So, some updates this season. We're going to be going to as many live games as we can to cover this team. Interviews when we can. We have a new title sponsor this year. It'll be Alpha's Appliance Solutions. They have graciously agreed to join us as a presenting sponsor, so they will present the show. They will do all of our interviews, pregame, postgame. Still going to have the postgame show. I believe I'm going to move it to YouTube. I think I've found a way to get comments as well. People can join a link, and they'll be able to have their voice on the show, and we'll go from there. And again, huge shout-out to our longtime sponsors, Eric Murray Realty and Rosemary Lynn Massage and Spa. They're back for another season of the Stick Tap and the Wildcat of the week. Again, it's for real now. There's no reset of the standings now. It's go time. And, tickets are on sale, single game tickets. A couple names you might want to pay attention to. September 30th, November 24th. That's it for Jeremy. I'm Adam. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wildcast Podcast. Follow us on social media at Moncton Wildcast.